Hello, everyone, and welcome to another Flower Power Live. Tonight, we're going to talk about this plant, which you may think, isn't that beautiful? But actually, most people hate it. They hate it. Let's find out why Japanese knotweed is such a tough plant to work with. My name is Allison, and I am an herbalist here at the Well Cultivated Life. And I love sharing my knowledge with you. So thank you for joining me for Flower Power Live, weekly plant wisdom. And so Japanese knotweed, it is Polygonum cuspidatum, and it's native, obviously, to Japan, as well as China and Korea. And it's in the buckwheat family. And so the seeds on it are very similar to one of my other favorites, the yellow dock. So yellow dock, buckwheat, and a few others are all related to each other. And it was originally brought over to the United States as a landscape plant for like along highways and things like that. Because as you can see, it has this beautiful fall white flowers that turn into these seeds. And this is the foliage, is giant, and everybody calls it bamboo, sort of because it kind of grows. You can see the sections on it in the way that you would see bamboo. And so it was going to be great, right? But of course, it became an invasive species and escaped out into everywhere. And where I live right now, it is basically grows in all of the drainage ditches, and it's moved into people's yards. And it's, like I said earlier, hated by most people. So now the thing is, it's literally, not mostly, literally completely impossible to eradicate because it propagates by its roots, which means anytime you try to dig it up, get rid of it, all you're doing is chopping up the roots of the ground into more and more pieces, and therefore helping it to spread even worse. So one of the other things is that this is one of the first times I've seen Japanese knotweed really going to seed. So if it isn't bad enough with just spreading by root, thanks to our warmer falls due to climate change, now it's going to seed. So its ability to spread even more is going to just cause it to invade our spaces even more. So luckily, it does have some redeeming qualities. And I love what this woman, Ashley from practicalselfreliance.com, I like her blog a lot. She talks about herbs as well as edibles, and it is edible. So she says it's an exotic invasive, but it is in fact a native plant in Japan and elsewhere. So how do they deal with it there? They do the only sensible thing you can do when a plant just won't stop growing. You eat it. So the part that's eaten would be the very, very early, before this comes up, when the little shoots are just coming up out of the ground. They almost look like asparagus. And in fact, when you cook them, they taste very much like asparagus. If you eat it raw, it's a little bit more like rhubarb with that kind of sour tart flavor to it. So here you go. You want to put a damper on any knotweed that's growing into your yard, just include it in part of your early spring cuisine, and that will help to keep it at bay. Now, of course, there are medicinal benefits to it as well. And the most important part, and the part that's usually used in medicine, is the root. So the seeds, I found out, can also be used, but most people use the root. And so I have personally gotten to know Japanese knotweed well over the past decade because it is the primary, like the first thing you start with for treatment of Lyme disease. And the key ingredient is resveratrol, which you might have heard of because resveratrol is also in grapes. And so sometimes you'll hear that this talked about is the reason why you should drink red wine every night. It's got resveratrol in it. So resveratrol is a very powerful antioxidant. And so there has been a lot of research focused on its potential to help with the heart and just the blood vessel function as well as brain function. And it's also a neuroprotective has neuroprotective effects as well. So in the treatment of Lyme, it acts as an antibiotic to help kill off the spirochetes, which is the name of the type of organism that causes Lyme. And it also has a lot of anti-inflammatory properties, which is very good because most people get like an arthritis type of condition due to Lyme. And this is because the spirochetes, they feed off of collagen, which is in all of the connective tissue and many, many other tissues, your skin, your stomach lining, lots of other tissues in your body as well. Now, a lot of people get Lyme, take an antibiotic and think, yay, I'm good. But it is very tenacious and tough to get rid of, kind of like Japanese knotweed, right? So if you have been diagnosed or you have, someone that has, you might want to check out something for more the long-term healing protocols by an herbalist named Stephen Buhner, and he wrote a book called Healing Lyme, and then he's got a couple other books that follow-up books on it because there's other co-infections that go along with it. And so I would recommend you check out some of his protocols if you're interested in working a little bit more herbally for the long-term healing. And highly recommend working with an herbalist who is experienced in treating Lyme patients because it can be very elusive and difficult to work with. So the flower essence, according to Hummingbird Essences, it actually, and this is an interesting thing because I haven't talked about this a whole lot with regard to flower essences. I'm usually presenting the more like energetic, emotional, psychological states that flower essence so often work on. But there are some essences in some conditions that in the body, the more physical conditions that flower essences can be used for. And so Hummingbird Essences says that the Japanese knotweed essence enhances the ganglionic communication with the healthy firing of neurons. So in other words, it helps the signals to be sent back and forth through your nervous system and helps to restore damaged nerves in outer extremities. Now that makes sense for Lyme as well, because that's a lot of the damage is in like your hands and things like that. So as far as it helps you with greater dexterity, and even people that might have had injuries to like their and affects their motor abilities. Now, in general, herbal energetics says that it promotes calmness and energy, and it clears one's self of limiting beliefs and opens one to healing potential, the healing potential innate within. So it does help us kind of like self-heal, which helps us to clear a lot of these limiting beliefs about our ability to heal ourselves. Now, Delta Gardens, which David Dalton, that has this awesome book called Stars of the Meadow, and he also has a website. And the website, gives you a little detail because they're selling the items, but this goes into some much more detail about each essence that he's developed. And he talks about some of the same things that these other places did. But he also talks a lot about how Japanese knotweed can be used for healing and harmonizing different kinds of groups, especially when there is frustration due to multiple different perspectives and personalities. So if you're on a board of directors, or even within your family, extended family, or in your business, if there are things where people generally like each other, but they have a hard time coming to making decisions, just because there's just so many different personalities involved, that this can help people work together more towards this. The reason why they came together, they can actually get things done more. And it's also going to be really useful when a new entity comes into a group. So a new baby comes into the household, a new pet, a new adult comes into a family where the people in the existing family unit are already really well bonded. It just helps to make that transition a little bit more smooth. So Japanese knotweed, I did not have a flower card for this plant. So instead I drew a card from this Starseed Oracle by Rebecca Campbell and Danielle Noel. And these are somewhat cosmological type of cards. And so I actually drew a card and I was like, this does not match at all. And I drew another one. Well, I had two and I was like, oh, I think this is it. So the name of this card is called Karmic Relationships. And in the book, it says that polarity causes conflict and highlights separation. However, because of this, conflict can also result in unity and growth. Too many misunderstandings are caused when we don't open our heart and mind to see things from a different point of view. This really matches a lot with what the flower essence was saying about working together in groups, right? And so this is the invitation of conflict. It's easy to react and take things personally. It's more challenging to see the innocence of all involved and find a way to grow closer through the conflict. I love that. So how can you see things? I have a couple of questions. How can you see things from a different perspective? And how are you being called to allow growth in the conflict? And this really connected to, these questions really connected to one of the things that I've learned a lot during my journey with Lyme. Like I said, I don't really talk about it that much. And it's partly because I do not want to embody Lyme. I don't want to be the person with Lyme. I just have no interest in that. And I often see people that are ill that do this. They completely step into the diagnosis and they use it perhaps. And this may be mean to say this, or it may not make sense for when I say this, but they use it as an excuse to stop their personal growth. And what I believe is that when we become unwell, it's actually a wake-up call, an invitation to do even more of this personal work, even to get deeper into your personal growth and get out of your body, because something's going on in your body that's not working. And so you have to look at the full human being, the mental, the emotional, the physical, and in my case, I believe in the spiritual part of it as well. So this card is called Karmic Relationships, right? And I don't really study the idea of karma, but I do really think that whatever you put out there, it gets reflected back to you. And I really feel like disease arrives because we have not been paying attention. We have been getting hints and we're not paying attention. And then it sticks around until we get the message of what we should be paying attention to. What have we been ignoring? And so just like when you're pushing yourself too hard, working too hard and not getting enough sleep, and your body's like, oh, really? You don't feel good. I'm trying to give you a hint here. And so bam, you get a cold, right? Now you're forced to rest and recover because that's what your body needs. Smart body, huh? And so I believe there are lessons that can be learned in every state of disease because, think about dis-ease. It's like this conflict within inside your body, and you have to be able to see all of the parts of it so that you can resolve the conflict and heal. So as the card is pointing out, there's always the possibility of unity and growth as the outcome from any conflict. And so if you do begin to have health issues, you need to kind of pay attention and don't just brush things to aside, because sure enough, it can get worse. And when you do look into this, you can learn an awful lot about not only what you need physically, but your mental and emotional states as well. So Japanese knotweed, as soon as you chop it up, it comes back, stronger than ever. And this is why it's so difficult to remove. And I don't know if it's invasive in other parts of the country, but it is pretty bad here. And you wonder, well, why is it so bad here? Well, New England is also one of the worst areas in the world for Lyme disease. And so it's curious to me then how this important remedy for Lyme has shown up so strongly in a place where there is a lot of Lyme, right? I always say, well, maybe it's here to give us a hint to pay attention. And I say that about always pay attention to what is showing up in your yard, what is showing up in your body with your disease, what is showing up in your yard with your plant. These things are giving you a hint. Like if there's a year where there's tons of mullein, this year seems to be a big mullein year, then perhaps we're going to have some issues with respiratory problems, which because mullein is one of the best respiratory herbs. So pay attention to what's showing up in your garden. It's probably trying to give you a hint before things get bad. All right. So this week, think of something in your health that you might have been either ignoring or just deciding, oh, it's not that bad, or I don't want to go get it, go to the doctor, it's a pain or whatever. And just stop ignoring it. It's beginning to cause this conflict inside of your body. So think about this conflict between how you should be feeling and how you actually feel, and how is that playing out in your life. So see how you can change your point of view to try to create more unity between how you should feel and how you're actually feeling. Don't ignore it. Pay attention. Take the messages from the plants and from your wisdom of your body as well. So that's our message from Japanese Knotweed tonight. I hope it was helpful for you. If you are not following me on Instagram, please do so. You can keep up with me. Mostly what I share is like, what am I up to now? And I'll show like, what am I harvesting, or seeds that I'm collecting, and kind of the seasonality of what I do throughout the weeks of each season. So I hope you follow me there at Cultivate My Life. And until then, I will see you next week on the next Flower Power. Have a great night, everybody.